When he ignores you, it feels like your heart contracts. Your mind spins with assumptions, and the silence is louder than any spoken word. But what if that distance isn't rejection? What if it's a quiet, unspoken expression of love? What looks like indifference might actually hide an internal struggle, a psychological storm even he can't fully understand. In this video, we'll explore why a man who loves deeply might paradoxically withdraw. We'll look beneath the surface to uncover the unconscious forces at play, the feminine projections he carries, and the raw fear of being consumed by what he desires most. Carl Jung's analytical psychology will guide us, revealing how love awakens not only light, but also the shadow. If you've ever asked yourself why he stays silent, get ready. The answers lie deeper than you think, within him and within you. Leave a comment saying, "I deserve a conscious love." According to Jung, love can trigger powerful inner dynamics, especially in romantic relationships. When a man pulls away, it's often not because he doesn't care, but because he's overwhelmed by feelings he can't quite process. Jung introduced the idea of projection, where we unknowingly project parts of ourselves onto others. When a man falls in love, he often projects his anima, the inner feminine aspect of his psyche, onto the woman. She becomes, without realizing it, the reflection of his deepest desires, fears, and unacknowledged needs. This can be a lot to handle. Faced with his own shadow, his insecurities, traumas, and unresolved emotions, he might retreat. Real love sparks the journey of individuation, where a person must face their unconscious and integrate both the light and the shadow within. In this light, his silence or distance may not be rejection. It may be his way of coping with the transformation love is demanding of him. Often, distance reflects attention, the yearning to merge with the other versus the fear of losing oneself. Instead of reading his silence as a lack of care, consider this. Maybe the relationship has touched something profound inside him. The process of integrating the anima in the man and the shadow in the woman is key to authentic, not idealized connection. If he loves you but still seems to pull away, he may be facing the greatest challenge of all, learning to love without losing himself. Love, especially the kind that reaches deep into the soul, is more than joy and connection. It's a mirror. It reflects everything we've hidden from ourselves. Jung reminds us, whatever remains unconscious eventually appears in our outer world, most often through those we love most. So when a man loves, it doesn't just awaken his dreams, it awakens his pain, his fear, and his shadow. And that's where the true work of love begins. To project both his light and darkness onto her is a natural yet complex process of the psyche, one that demands emotional maturity to understand and integrate. This is why, more often than not, instead of drawing closer, he pulls away. True love doesn't just invite surrender, it demands profound transformation. It's almost as if his soul understands that in order to love fully, he must face everything he has been avoiding. The fear of losing himself in the other, of losing control and giving up the defenses built over a lifetime, becomes stronger than the desire for connection. And that's when he distances himself. The impulse to ignore, isolate, or even act coldly may be an unconscious attempt to protect the fragmented identity he has carefully constructed. When love awakens the shadow, the man is forced to confront an inner chasm. He faces a choice: confront his wounds or hold on to the comfort of what's familiar. Many, unprepared for this emotional battle, choose to flee. In this light, silence, withdrawal, and seeming indifference are not signs of a lack of love. On the contrary, they may indicate that the feeling has stirred something so deep within him that he doesn't yet know how to cope with it. Though painful for the person on the receiving end, this movement is a call to look inward and reflect on what this bond is revealing about oneself. For the woman who feels ignored, the pain can be devastating, especially if she's projecting her own unhealed wounds or unrealistic expectations onto him. However, understanding this process can completely shift her perspective when she recognizes that his withdrawal might be rooted in an internal struggle with his own shadow. She can stop taking it personally. Instead, she begins to see the deeper psychological dynamics at play. It's crucial to remember that true love is a journey of individuation, a process where both partners are invited to become more authentic versions of themselves. A deep connection will inevitably stir childhood wounds, old patterns, and the defenses we've built to survive. And that's necessary because no transformation happens without crisis. So when he pulls away after showing love, it might be because he's grappling with the fear of losing himself in the relationship. He fears dissolving in a surrender that requires more from him than he's able to give at that moment. What he truly fears isn't the relationship itself, but what it triggers within him: the need for change, healing, and the integration of his shadow. This is the beauty and pain of love. It doesn't just unite, it reveals. And often we're not ready to see what's being exposed. But when you understand the psychological roots of this behavior, you gain something far more powerful. Not the power to control the other, but the power to decide how you'll respond to the pain, with awareness, compassion, and courage. Carl Jung described the anima as the feminine archetype within a man's psyche, an inner image that shapes how he perceives and interacts with women. This figure, shaped by emotional experiences with feminine figures, especially the mother, represents far more than an ideal. It's the doorway to the wholeness of the masculine psyche, a key element in the process of individuation. When a man is unaware of his anima, he often projects it onto the women he becomes involved with. This creates relationships built on illusions, unrealistic expectations, and deep frustration. When a man loves you but simultaneously withdraws, he's often confronting this very projection. You start to embody everything mysterious, sensitive, and emotional, everything he was never taught to recognize or develop within himself. You become a mirror to his most fragile and repressed parts. On one hand, he's drawn to you, on the other, he feels threatened. After all, connecting with his inner feminine can be overwhelming for an ego that has been taught to value control, logic, and emotional distance as signs of strength. The anima isn't just a romantic or idealized image. It also brings emotional chaos, the desire for union, intuition, and sensitivity. These forces, when not understood, breed confusion and fear. As a result, the love he feels for you can act as both a gateway to this forgotten part of his psyche and a trigger for an internal crisis. When he looks at you, he doesn't just see you. He sees everything he longs for, everything he fears, and everything he didn't even know how to name. At first, this projection may feel enchanting. He places you on a pedestal, viewing you as unique, perfect, almost magical. But as you share time together and your true humanity comes into view, that projection begins to fade. Disillusionment sets in, not because you've changed, but because you were never the ideal he projected onto you. What he loved was an inner image, a part of himself needing to be reintegrated, not something to be sought outside himself. And when he realizes this, it can cause an emotional collapse. The fantasy shatters, and with it comes fear, discomfort, and withdrawal. The wounded masculine is the one disconnected from his sensitivity. He's the one who learned to suppress his tears and believe that vulnerability is a sign of weakness. By projecting the anima onto a woman, he taps into the most sacred, tender part of himself, but without the emotional tools to cope with it. It's like opening a door to an unknown universe, a universe that overwhelms him, making him feel small, lost, and confused. In that confusion, he flees. For the woman on the receiving end, the pain of his withdrawal can feel intense, but his pain is just as real, silent, hidden. It's the emptiness of not knowing who he truly is, of being unable to understand his feelings, and of not knowing how to maintain a meaningful connection with something that defies logic. He does love you, but he also fears you, not because of who you are, but because of what you represent. A call for transformation. It's important to understand that this dynamic is not your fault. You didn't cause his crisis, but with this awareness, you can choose how to respond. Instead of trying to rescue him, save him, or convince him to come back, the most powerful act may be to give him the space and time he needs to confront his inner journey. At the same time, you can reflect on your own projections. What did you expect him to be? What role was he fulfilling in your own psyche? Love is not just an encounter of bodies. It's a mirroring of souls. Understanding the anima and its role in masculine psychology can help us see withdrawal not as rejection, but as a moment of deep inner crisis, a call for both individuals to grow and transform. When a man loves you but still ignores you, his behavior might seem inexplicable. Yet through the lens of Jung's analytical psychology, ignoring is not simply neglect or disinterest. It is often a defense mechanism, an unconscious reaction to parts of himself that he has yet to integrate. To truly understand this behavior, we must look beneath the surface and recognize the unconscious forces at play within the male psyche, especially when confronted with a profound emotional bond. True love is transformative. It shakes the internal structures that have been built over a lifetime. Structures often based on emotional repression, rigid ideas of masculinity, and a deep fear of vulnerability and surrender. When a man enters a relationship that demands emotional presence, authenticity, and openness, his inner world may react with resistance. In this context, ignoring is not simply a way of fleeing. It is an unconscious attempt to maintain control over an internal reality that is beginning to crumble. As Jung teaches us, the unconscious is dynamic, and when it is not fully integrated, it manifests through symptoms, contradictory attitudes, and defensive behaviors. The withdrawal, the silence, the sudden coldness are all expressions of this internal conflict. He doesn't know how to express what he feels because he hasn't yet learned how to fully feel. For many men, emotional language was suppressed early in life. So when love comes knocking, demanding true connection, he shuts down. His defense is silence. His strategy is escape. It's common for this kind of man to identify with the archetype of the hero, the rational, strong figure. Vulnerability feels like a threat to his sense of identity. He fears dissolving into the relationship, becoming overwhelmed by feelings he cannot name, and losing control over something he can't dominate. And so, even while he loves you, he may still choose to ignore you. Why? Because true love demands surrender. And that is the opposite of everything he's been taught to be as a man. This emotional ignorance is also fed by the shadow, which Jung describes as the hidden, repressed side of the personality. Everything we reject, judge, or fail to accept about ourselves gets pushed into the unconscious, and in times of crisis, it rises to the surface unexpectedly. For the masculine psyche, this shadow may include fear of abandonment, insecurity, suppressed anger, jealousy, fragility, and even neediness. When true love stirs these emotions, he is forced to confront parts of himself he doesn't recognize. Silence becomes a way to protect himself from shattering under the weight of these feelings. Yet, the act of ignoring can also carry a deeper symbolic meaning. In many archetypal traditions, the hero must undergo a period of exile, a journey through the desert, before he can rediscover himself. In this sense, withdrawal can be an unconscious inward journey, a way to reorganize his internal world, to process and understand what is happening within him, to name the feelings he's been avoiding. However, if this process remains unconscious, he doesn't know how to communicate it. The woman, in turn, feels only the pain of abandonment. This is where many relationships break down. The woman interprets the silence as a reflection of her own inadequacy, when in reality, it's a reflection of his inner struggle. He doesn't know how to express what he's feeling, and she doesn't know how to interpret the silence, leading to feelings of rejection and confusion on both sides. The woman finds herself caught in a process that belongs more to him than to her. By recognizing this, she can break free from the cycle of pain and reactive behavior. Instead of frantically seeking answers or pleading for attention, she turns inward and reflects on what this behavior is awakening within her. The key here is awareness. Jung said, "Whatever is not brought into consciousness will manifest in life as fate." If he doesn't understand why he withdraws, why he ignores her, or why he can't sustain the love he feels, he will keep repeating this pattern in all his relationships. Likewise, if the woman doesn't understand the deeper meaning behind his behavior, she risks hurting herself by trying to fix him. In this context, ignoring is a cry from the unconscious, a plea for time, space, and silence so that something within him can reorganize. It's not easy for the one who waits, who loves, and who feels abandoned. But understanding this behavior as part of a deeper dynamic can transform pain into wisdom. Most importantly, it can allow love, even when not reciprocated in the expected way, to serve as a mirror for growth for both individuals. When faced with the silence of a man who loves yet withdraws, the woman often becomes overwhelmed by an emotional whirlwind: doubt, rejection, insecurity, anger, and neediness. Yet, within this pain lies a hidden invitation, a call to consciousness. Jung taught that every meaningful encounter is, at its core, an opportunity for individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are by integrating your internal polarities. This is precisely when the silence of the other can become a gateway to self-knowledge. The awakened woman isn't one who doesn't feel pain, but one who chooses not to lose herself in it. When she realizes that his behavior is not a direct reflection of her worth, but rather a reflection of a deeper, unconscious dynamic, she begins to shift her focus. She takes the energy out of the wound and repositions her center of power. She understands that true love starts from within. The other person is merely a mirror, not the source of her completeness. What was once unbearable silence now becomes an opportunity for inner listening. Rather than asking, "Why is he ignoring me?" the awakened woman asks, "What is this absence trying to show me about myself?" This shift in perspective is profound. Instead of seeking emotional validation from him, she begins to observe her own vulnerabilities, attachment patterns, fantasies of idealized love, and fears of abandonment. In doing so, she starts her healing journey. The awakened woman doesn't try to force answers or chase after someone who is pulling away. She understands that his silence speaks of an internal process that only he can resolve. She respects that, not as passivity, but as an act of self-love. His withdrawal may paradoxically be the necessary space for her to return to herself, strengthen her identity, and rewrite her emotional stories from a more mature and aware place. The awakened woman also recognizes her own shadow. She realizes that just as he projects his anima onto her, she may have projected onto him the absent father, the idealized savior, or the partner who was supposed to fill her emotional voids. By bringing these projections into the light of consciousness, she frees herself from being a hostage to unconscious patterns. She starts to choose more clearly and freely, becoming whole, not just a half searching for completion. Transforming silence into awareness takes courage. It's easier to blame the other, to label him as cold, immature, or cowardly. But it's much harder to look inward and recognize how much this silence stirs up old, lingering pains. Yet it is within this confrontation that the woman's true power is born. This is not a power that dominates, manipulates, or imposes, but one that embraces, observes, and transforms. The awakened feminine is receptive but not passive. She is sensitive but not so vulnerable that she loses herself. She is deep but knows how to protect herself. She knows when to persist and when to let go. Above all, she understands that true love is not about clinging, but about liberating. And so, even in the face of absence, she does not dissolve. She expands. When a woman enters this state of consciousness, the relational dynamic changes completely. The man, still trapped in his inner conflicts, senses this shift. Often he finds himself impacted by her transformation. Not infrequently, this silent yet firm presence awakens in him a desire to look within, to understand what he is losing, and to evolve. But that is not guaranteed, nor should it be her objective. True transformation occurs when she stops living in response to his actions and begins living in alignment with her own truth. The awakened woman knows she deserves a love that does not silence her or leave her in confusion. But she also understands that the other's maturation process is often slow, and it is not her responsibility to speed it up or lead it. Her role is to remain true to herself, nurture her soul, grow through her experiences, and wisely choose what deserves her presence. Thus, his silence becomes a teacher, not a punishment, a mirror, not a sentence. And she moves forward, not as one fleeing from pain, but as someone who knows that pain is part of the journey, not its final destination. Love is not merely an encounter, it is a revelation. When he ignores you, even while loving you, perhaps he is in conflict with parts of himself that he doesn't yet understand. His silence speaks of an internal universe in turmoil, of unhealed wounds, and of a projected anima that confronts him with everything he still needs to understand about himself. And you, on the other side, carry the pain of feeling invisible. But you also have the chance to transform that pain into awareness. Jung taught us that true union only exists when there is integration. He must find his truth, and you must find yours. Love only flourishes when it ceases to be an escape and becomes a presence. Presence begins when you choose to return to yourself. If this content has resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and share this video with anyone who needs to understand these hidden dynamics of love. Leave your comment with the phrase, "I deserve a conscious love," and join a community that seeks relationships that are deeper, more genuine, and transformative. Click on the video that appears on your screen now and continue this journey of self-knowledge with us.